Dion, we had kind of been waiting for a game of the tournament so far. This first weekend had not had that kind of signature moment. Florida UConn was that signature moment. Gators win 77-75, but UConn had them on the ropes. UConn led a majority of the game. Then Walter Clayton went bananas. He scored 8 points in a stretch over 2 minutes in the last 3 minutes of the game, gave the Gators the lead. Florida made their final six shots of the game to close this out. There are a number of directions we can go with this, Dion. I'm going to start with Walter Clayton though, because every year we talk about who's the Kemba candidate, who's the guy who's going to lead his team and become a star. Walter Clayton's that guy.
He is. He is. He is. That sidestep three to go up 70-64. Toughest shot of the tournament, in my opinion. I tweeted this out because I heard I guess one of the announcers said it how Hurley told his team that they're in a dog fight. We dragged them into a Big East style fight. If you want to get in a dog fight with Florida, just know their dogs are pit bulls. And I think that's really the biggest difference here is
Mhm.
no matter how you want to play Florida, they have an answer for you. And was the answer maybe the answer that we wanted to see? No, but it was correct, right? If this was an essay test, did it go over every single essay exam? Did it go over every single quotation the professor wanted? No, they only won by 6 points. Duke did everything the professor wanted, down to citations, all that. Maybe they did MLA format instead of a different format, but they answered the question correctly and got out of there with a victory. And everything that they do, Todd Golden hits all the right buttons. You can see at the end, um, at the end, like, and I don't know why, like, this hit home for me so much, but when the whole team was interviewing, and the whole team like came around Todd Golden and Walter Clayton,
Yeah.
you don't see that as much in college basketball as you're used to. I feel like,
Hmm.
the Oklahoma City Thunder do this every game, and it's always like, oh, this is that college basketball feel. That's why we love this team. They're very fun, so on and so forth. I don't feel like you see that as much in college basketball as you used to, and it's really, really cool to see a team, a group of guys that like came from mid majors in a
Hmm.
lot of ways. Todd Golden coming from University of San Francisco, he gets to go home next weekend too. St. Mary's Gale, by the way, shout out Todd. But to really wrap around their coach and really be there for their guys, and this is really like a family environment for them.
Todd Golden said something. The Norfolk State game for Florida, the first round game, was relatively insignificant because they went up 30 in like the first 10 minutes and kind of cruised from there. But as they were going up 30, a big part of it was Walter Clayton was red hot the first part of that game. And he was hunting shots, shooting some of the most absurd things that you're like, what are you doing? And they would go in or they'd go close. But he was aggressive and he was shooting shots that were very similar to what he shot at the end of this game.
Right.
And Todd Golden was asked in the press conference, like, Walter Clayton came out looking aggressive, doing all that stuff, taking some questionable shots. It was basically asking a question about if he was okay with Clayton kind of having that kind of shot selection early in a game.
Right.
And Golden's response was like, yeah, like I have full trust in him. He's awesome. He's one of the best off dribble shoot, like all this kind of stuff, praising Walter Clayton and wanting him to do that, wanting him to hunt his shots that way.
Right.
It's the same exact mindset at the end of this game. Like I don't think you have the confidence to do what Clayton did at the end of this game if your coach doesn't give you the freedom and trust to do that the first part of any game, right? Like it wasn't a detour from Florida's normal game plan, what they normally do. They didn't have to do anything special in these spots. Now, making those shots and shooting them was a special performance and like a special way for Clayton to step up in that. But Florida didn't change who they were or what they were doing. They just did it better.
Yeah.
I think that matters in terms of making it more sustainable.
I agree. I think it's why this team likes each other so much. That's why people like playing for Todd Golden, by the way. It's because if you can make the shots, he doesn't care that you take them. As a hooper, one of the worst feelings is when it's like, I can do this. You watch me do it, and you're telling me no.
Yeah.
Like what? I get it if it's a stupid shot. You know what I mean? Where it's like 2 seconds into the shot clock. Sure, tell me it was a dumb shot in that moment. Does that make it a dumb shot forever? No. And Todd Golden doesn't do that. He very
Yeah.
much rides with his guys and what they're able to do. And I couldn't have been more impressed. I do want to say something. Everyone kind of clowned Elijah Martin for that dunk attempt. No, that was the right decision because if it goes in, the roof pops
Oh,
off that place. And they win by 20 if that dunk goes in. So that was absolutely the right decision, in my opinion. If he just lays it up, cool, it's a tie game, you kind of move on. Or and they might have been up by one because the other Clayton three got ruled, ended up being ruled a three. But
mm.
it wouldn't have hit the same. If that dunk goes in, the roof pops off that place.
There was no doubt from anybody in this arena when he got the ball that he was not going to try to dunk it.
Yeah,
Like I was shocked he missed. I was
he got that.
shocked he missed. And well, he did. But the extra like wind up he gave it, that was the way the arena was feeling. Like that wasn't Elijah Martin trying to do something. That was the way everybody or the general census in the or the general sense in the arena was feeling that kind of unloading. I did not realize how many Florida fans were here until Walter Clayton hit the three.
Yeah.
Because at that point they got loud and they spent a lot of the game nervous, which understandable. You were on the ropes against the
Yeah.
two-time defending champs for a good part of this game, largely because I think they held Florida's front court in check. They're the first team to really do that. Condon didn't have a great game. Hawk didn't have a great game. Hang logged in, didn't score. Uh, Chinilu was okay on the glass, but kind of got outplayed by Samson Johnson. There wasn't those performances. But Elijah Martin was awesome in the first half. Kept them in the game and they kept turning the ball over. And then Will Richard had 13 in the second half, too. He was the only guy for Florida who played all 20 minutes. That second half had a big steal at the end, too. The amount of guys who can beat you on this team is special because they did not have a good game. And the whole unit let them down. And they still won a game because the two other guys stepped up.
Yeah, they have so many ways to beat you. And that's kind of what they showed in this one, where it's like, cool, we'll play your style too. And by the way, your style's our style because our style's everything. If you want
Yeah.
to get up and down and run, we could do that. If you want to play defense, I want to say they said a stat like Florida hasn't allowed an opponent to score over 66 points in like, I don't remember how many games it was, but it's been a second.
They
Um,
gave up 94 to Bama
that's what I thought.
at
It
the end of
was
the SEC. Yeah.
there were some interesting stats brought up by like even at halftime of the Duke game, someone said, "Yeah, that was a 25-12 run for Duke to end the half." I'm like, dude, it was a 12-0 run for Duke to end the half.
They
So
want to just extend it out a little bit longer.
yeah, there's some interesting stuff. Like the way he described, I'm like, bro, they were tied in your case for like 5 of the minutes you mentioned. It's a little disingenuous, but um, they mentioned something about 66 points with Florida. I don't fully remember what the official stat was, but it didn't sound correct. I do know that much.
Yeah. Let's talk about UConn because we have to do something of a post mortem on them. So the two-time defending champs, they had won 13 consecutive NCAA tournament games before this. It's tied for the second longest streak of all time, behind UCLA when they won, like six back-to-back titles. I thought they played well in this game, and I thought Hurley coached well in this game. He ran circles around Todd Golden.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Hurley had a quote in his post-game presser. He discussed how some people thought he said he was on the hot seat in 2020. They asked him why he was so emotional with this group, and he's like, "Well, this group gave me my job back." Um, I don't know how he was ever on the hot seat. Like I get it. So, like maybe they didn't have the initial success they were looking for out of Hurley. Today is why he's the best effing coach in the world. Not the two
Yeah.
championships, especially not the second one that we all thought he would win. Phenomenal rosters he put together. Don't get me wrong, but today is why he's the best effing coach in the country. Today is why it's not particularly close because they're outmanned, outgunned at every single level. And
Yeah.
Hurley said, no, we will drag them into our game. I will drag them into our game. I also noticed something. I want to defend Hurley's sometimes over the top behavior a little bit. I noticed something in this game that I didn't notice in previous ones, and I think I just wasn't paying attention to it. I'm sure that he's been doing it the whole time. His players are a little over the top themselves. And
Oh yeah.
sometimes when he goes crazy, it's actually him getting his players off the court and getting them away from the rest, and then he just does it himself because a tee on Hurley is different than a tee on solo ball.
Mhm.
Alex Caravan, Liam McNeely. And I'm not saying that makes it okay, especially like at Mallard when he was dragging himself across the court. Don't get me wrong, but that's the big brain aspect of Hurley. That's the best
Yeah.
effing coach in the world that says, "Hey guys, I'll take the hit because it's easier for me to make sure I'm not ejected than it is for you to pick up a tech and you also get a foul on top of that."
I think that comes into play more than we think.
Yes.
But I also think he goes off the handles.
Oh, 100%. 100%. 100%. He does. It was something I noticed and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. Like, I think, like, I'm not saying that's the only reason he does what he does, but it was like, huh, that's interesting. That, like, that's the vantage point.
I think you saw the press conference too, because he was crying or tearful for a lot of it. That the emotion goes both ways. Like it's not just anger or intensity that comes out. And it wasn't crying because they lost and sad. It was like gratefulness for the guys around him. Like the guys who are up there at the podium were Alex Caravan, Samson Johnson, who's a senior, and Hassan Diarra, who's a senior. Diarra transferred in. Somebody asked a question to Samson Johnson about being the winningest player in college basketball history or UConn history, and like before the guy finished asking the question, like Hurley almost lost it because you could tell that like how much like this group meant to him because they've been through all of this,
Right.
and that like you know his tenure's on over UConn's going to be back to Final Fours and probably win more championships under Hurley, but like that this run was over. There's some finality to it and finality to the group that really hit home. So that was nice to see. Um, just the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
That it's who he is and not just him lashing out.
Yeah. It's who the whole family is, right? Like
Yeah.
Bobby's the same way.
Oh yeah.
That's why I love the Hurleys. It is
Yeah.
I've said this a million times. To me, basketball is an art. And I know a lot of people are probably like, you're nuts. But like to me, that's what it is. It's a way to express yourself. You're supposed to be emotional when you play it. You're
Mhm.
supposed to leave everything out there, right? And you never have to question with the Hurleys if they were prepared for a game. You never have
Mhm.
to question with the Hurleys like if they did everything they possibly could to win. And to me, leaving your emotions out there, that's what the sport is all for. That's what art's for. And,
Yeah.
not every painting's perfect, right?
Yeah.
There is that element when he goes over the top. That's a painting we don't want. But at the end of the day, like art is art, and you're supposed to be emotional when you're making art.
Speaking of being prepared, their game plan was awesome.
Oh yeah.
UConn's offense has a ton of motion in it anyway. It's why they've won two titles in a row up until this year, and why they've had success. But they did a really good job of getting Florida's four man, whoever that was, having to work through screens because Florida was twitching everything,
Hmm.
which you don't see very often with teams that play two bigs.
Right.
They had everybody switching everything, and so UConn kind of knew, okay, one of them is going to be guarding solo ball Alex Carabin or Liam McNeely. At some point, one of those guys are going to come off the screen with Thomas Hawk chasing them, and they're going to have an open look. And UConn, didn't shoot well. They're only 8 of 29 from three. One of them was the one at the end that mattered to some. If you bet on the game,
Yeah, if you had the over, that was special.
yeah,
If you had the over, that was special.
the over and the line, I think that covered.
Yeah.
Um,
I think they had the
but
line. No, so Florida was 9.5 point favorites.
it was
So
nine
they
and a
had the
half.
line either way.
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, okay.
But the total was literally like it was
It's
gonna lose.
151 and a half, right? Or
Yeah, it
161
was
and a
gonna
half.
lose by half a point or
Yeah,
something.
right.
And then he made that shot. It was a crazy three to take, by the way. Shout out McNeely. That's how you want to go out for your college career. He's an interesting dude, man. Like I don't have the craziest high opinion of him. I think he's going to be a great NBA player, but I mentioned it on the preview. Like, I think he's more of a role player guy than he will be like a star, like we might have
Yeah.
thought. Um, is it interesting? I'm glad you brought up UConn's game plan. This is why Hurley was so close to going to the NBA, right? He plays an NBA style offense. And what he saw from the other team is that's a really, really good college team. Like
Yes.
that's an amazing college team. But what Hurley said was, we're gonna make them play an NBA game. We're gonna make them have to switch, or they're gonna chase, or like we're gonna move
Yeah.
them around in ways that most college teams wouldn't move them, and let's see how they react. And to be completely honest, for about I would say 30-ish minutes, Florida didn't react well.
No.
And then, admittedly, I think UConn got a little tired. You see this with teams that run motion offenses. When you get fatigued, the motion stops,
Yeah.
obviously, and that causes some issues. And when the motion stopped, Florida was able to get in the passing lanes. Florida was able to reach a little bit. They caught some harder shots. And then on the other end, they dragged them into their game where it's like, cool, if you want to take advantage of mismatches. By the way, everybody's a mismatch for Walter Clayton, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin.
Yeah. Florida simply went to another level late in this game that UConn has hit the last 2 years. Like the great teams hit, the teams who are more talented than you hit, and UConn couldn't get there. Um, Watching this game, I think Solo Ball might be an All American next year. I think he's awesome. He was not great numbers wise in this game, only 2 of 11 from the field, but the two threes he hit came in big spots. He showed more playmaking chops than I was expecting to see from him. I think he played great. Do you think this was the last game of Caravan's career at UConn, or do you think he's back for his senior year?
I think he'll be back for his senior year. I was always like not curious per se because that's super disrespectful, but I don't know if I personally viewed Caravan so highly on the NBA level as others did. Like he can shoot and he plays good defense, but I think those are the aspects of his game that translates to the league. And obviously, 3-and-D stuff is the priority in the NBA.
Hmm.
But he ain't that athletic though. Like that's my
Yeah,
thing.
he's not a can't miss guy, right? I think he's skilled enough to carve out a role and have
Yes.
like a decade long career in the league. I'd like to see him come back. I'd
Yeah.
like to see him come back, but the way he was crying post game, I don't know. I don't know.
But that's my thing is like I mean I guess we'll see. We'll see how the draft process plays out. But I think if you're an NBA team, like are you like jumping to take Alex Caravan? Like
I
maybe
I
in
don't I don't know, but I think he is, let's say, more of an NBA prospect than Cam Spencer,
for sure.
who has carved out a role for himself already.
For sure. I just feel like for him to leave UConn, he has to be a first round pick, right? Like he's not going to leave UConn for a two-way or a second round. I mean, if that's what he would leave for, then yeah. And if I'm an NBA team, I'll jump to
Yeah,
take him on
I,
that.
I it's where he's at. Whether it's like a bet on myself, I came back once knowing this is my last year, or if I want, there's more that goes into that decision. Some of it is the mindset he had when he came into the year. So
Maybe yeah. If he's willing to be a second round pick or a two-way guy, then yeah, absolutely. If
yeah,
I'm an NBA team, I'm all over that. I just felt like it would have to be first round at UConn, and in that case, like if I'm an NBA team, I'm like, you can go back to UConn, bro. Like we
yeah,
can. We'll try
yeah,
this again next year. Solo ball, he takes some bad shots, but the self creation he has, the ability to create space, this is going to sound nuts. From this team, he will be the best NBA player.
yes,
He will be the
thousand
best
percent.
NBA player from this team. He will supersede what Alex Caravan, Liam McNeely. I actually think Terrence Reed's going to carve out a role for himself in the league too. But what the maybe, but what the three of them will be able to do in the NBA, I think also by a good margin. His height's gonna like hold him back a little bit, but this dude has a ton of campaign to him. He has a
Yeah,
ton of campaign to him. And I think he's going to have a long, long NBA career. Very, very successful one. He 2 of 11, 2 of 9 from three. He was obviously not the greatest performance, But the looks he got, although there might have been early shot clock shots that people didn't,
Mhm.
that the announcers didn't love. The announcers are so bad in this game, by the way. But that the announcers didn't love. But the way he created space to get those looks, I was like, yeah, yeah, no. On the court, by the way, he's the best NBA player that was on the court in this game.
Maybe. We'll see.
Who did
I
you like, Clayton?
Perhaps. I think
I
I
like Clayton
think
too.
I think Elijah Martin and Richard carve out roles as well. I think some of it depends on what Solo develops into. Last thing I want to ask you, because we asked this with teams, every team that's won so far. You feel better about Florida after this because they got over that hump. You oftentimes hear, one seed side by this 8-9 game being it's one of the toughest on their road. This certainly was that for Florida. So do you feel better because they got over the two-time defending champs, got tested and responded, or worse because they were in this position in the first place?
Way better. Way better. Because of the reaction. And the reaction was so palpable that like it went from like, oh, Florida might squeak this one out to, oh, they're up 8 with a minute to go. They might cover the spread. And granted, it was like only ended up being a 2-point victory. There were some mental lapses in that final minute that led to that. But like there was a world where they could have covered the spread. I feel way better. This is my team to beat in the tournament by far. They showed today we will take your best punch, and our best punch is better. And we're still waiting to see that from everybody.
Yeah.
We're still waiting to see that from everybody. Auburn straight up just doesn't look good to me. Houston, I felt like looked phenomenal against Gonzaga, but like I don't know if Gonzaga played the greatest. And then
Mhm.
Duke has just bullied teams the whole way.
Yeah.
So Florida really got a challenge from a UConn team early, especially they're not going to face a better coached unit for the rest of this tournament, right? So like they had the toughest challenge. I think they lived up to it, even if they didn't necessarily live up to it in like the most dominant fashion.
Mhm.
But can I say something about the announcers real quick that like really bothered me?
Yep.
Uh, I'm glad this UConn season's over. These announcers got to give it up with Terrace Reed. I don't know how much his management is paying the announcers to say some of this stuff. But when it was a 3-point game, the announcer's like, we got to get Terrace Reed a touch here. Excuse me? Excuse me? It's a 3-point game with not a lot of time left, and what you want is a Terrace Reed post up. Liam McNeely, Alice Caravan, and Solo Ball are on the court, and that's what you want. Like, give it a rest. Like, absolutely give it a rest. Terrace Reed was good this year. Big East Six Man of the Year, crazy award. Still makes no sense to me that that award exists. He won it. He had a good year. Might be back at UConn, might not. I still remember the softball game. I don't know if UConn fans do, but he's going to be successful regardless of where he goes. We don't need to manufacture something that isn't there. That's all I'm
Yeah.
going to say.
Yeah. Florida good win, man. Florida good win. I think we'll take it.
It is March, and that means that March Madness is upon us. And if you are looking for a place to play, Underdog Fantasy has you covered. Sign up and deposit using code SLEEPERS, that's code SLEEPERS, to receive up to $1,000 in bonus credit plus a free pick. Head over to Underdog Fantasy today and use promo code SLEEPERS to take advantage of this amazing offer.